Now, Phil has joined us. Phil Pejic of Bedford, email and SMS savant. He's got storied history in that he's founded his own brands and scaled them, worked in P&G, et cetera, et cetera. We want to bring him in here right now to talk to us about what is happening in email. Get in here, Phil. Get in here, Phil.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's
What's
going
up? Let's
great.
go.
Phil, can we? Something's happening with his internet. Do we got you, Phil?
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Is it shaky?
It is a little
I
shaky.
think he's maybe stabling up a little bit.
There we go. There we go. I think we've got you now, Philip. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. It might just be delayed. I don't know.
That's all right, Phil. We are glad that you have joined us, my friend. And, I would like for you to just step back a little and give us perspective on copywriting specifically. There is rumor that you have said, and we need to talk about it if you said it. There is rumor that you have said that copywriting is the elite, most important skill in e-commerce. Number one, is that true? And number two, Phil, can you back that up? Because if it's important, we need to get into it and be able to execute it at a high level, my friend.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely true. I think copywriting is maybe the most underestimated and most important skill in e-commerce. I think at its core, if you don't understand kind of how to manipulate words and talk to persona and actually understand them at a level deep enough where you know what their problems are and what you're trying to solve, I don't think you're actually able to produce a product that succeeds in the e-commerce landscape. And I think that's where a lot of founders typically launch products and ideas without thinking through what am I actually solving, who am I solving it for, and at its root, that's a copywriting problem.
And how I would imagine you've got to put workflows, processes in place to execute that in a winsome way for the many brands that you work with at Bedford. What does that look like in the AI era, that we're now all living in? Do you throw the tools aside and pull out an Ogilvy book? Or, what do those processes look like on your side when it comes to actual execution with your team?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that comes up quite often. I think for every brand we work with, there's still an element of like the brand guidelines and copywriting guidelines, and making sure at a really deep level, like the brand understands who they're talking to, kind of why they're talking to them, and then what tone they want to speak to them. And that tone might change over time, season to season, promo to launch, or whatever that might be. I think at its core, like that needs to be like a fundamental, and that needs to be set up. Past that, the people on our team who are writing copy, they are rooted in, they do understand the fundamentals of copy. So the Ogilvy's, the kind of Adweek copywriting handbook, all these like really important resources that exist around copy, and just general interest in like reading, consuming. Ideally, someone's like out there like seeing what's happening in popular culture, and kind of has a pulse on like what's actually happening in the world. Because copywriting kind of demands all these things. It demands your fundamentals, but it also demands like an understanding of what's happening. And when you bring those things together, I think that's when you start to like leverage the tools from a starting point, which is brainstorming, and then all the way through, if you really want to polishing a finished product. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I think it's how are we actually starting to integrate those tools. And I guess to answer your question, like at our agency, it's very much like, A, do you know the fundamentals? Or one, do you know the fundamentals? Two, like, do you understand the brand you're working with and what their approach is? Three, like, how are you using these tools to brainstorm, or maybe you have some other approach to brainstorm? And then four, like coming up with the ideas that usually comes from the person themselves. And then they're using AI to brainstorm, iterate, and come up with even more cool directions to take the idea in. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like we're holding hands with AI right now when it comes to copy. And we have some copywriters who like barely use it at all, which is also super cool.
Interesting.
Could you dive a little bit more into those ideas and any, campaigns or concepts that you're kind of testing right now?
As far as like ideas go, it depends on the brand, and like what the brand is trying to accomplish. So a lot of times it's very similar to like what other brands are doing as far as like teasers, as far as launches go. as far as promotions every day. But really, it just comes down like a layer deeper of like, okay, we know we want to run something for the Super Bowl. How do we make this more interesting and more fun in a creative way? So like for the Super Bowl, for one of our brands, we kind of did a halftime segment where for only an hour there was like a really unique promotion going on, that like customers of this brand, like it had nothing to do with the Super Bowl, but we had an insight that there were a lot of people who are watching the Super Bowl and who are curious kind of in a moment, because maybe at halftime they weren't doing anything, they were sitting on the toilet, they were going out to have a cigarette, whatever it is, and we caught a lot of those customers in that moment, and we put a promo, we put an offer in front of them, and like that turned into a really awesome campaign. But beyond that, like from a non-promotional standpoint, we're just looking at like what's happening in culture. Like obviously memes are like a huge like cultural moment, and it's been going on for years. And
Yeah.
working with brands and figuring out like everybody loves memes, like everyone from like a child to a grandmother, like everybody loves memes. And it's like, how do we leverage that in email? And so working with brands to figure out like, hey, like what are the creative ways we can kind of, and also like legal ways we can like incorporate memes into your content. And then just constantly iterating and like scrolling through Pinterest, looking at competition, just constantly ideating and thinking of everyone's doing this. Like, how do we kind of do something a little bit different and have our own spin or just a completely different take that when we show up in the inbox, just like you would on Instagram, on TikTok, on this podcast, you want something different, something unique to hit that inbox so that people don't feel like it's just another email and they look forward to it over and over because your brand's always doing stuff that's unique and different.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is interesting because for me, and I think for a lot of others, Phil, email kind of gets relegated to a kind of a boring category. You know, it's like we know how it works, and but you having this thought like, hey, think about the inbox like an algo, and you want to stand out, you want to be interesting, and
Yeah.
involve things that surprise and delight, etc. I know you've got background with subscription brands and your own brands, etc. And maximizing LTV with email and such. What are the missed opportunities in 2026, Phil, when it comes to promos or inboxing, or what are the biggest gaping holes you still see in accounts now that maybe we're just not thinking about simply because email has just kind of been relegated to this boring category in some operators' minds?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's a great question. And it's one I think a lot of brands just taking even like 10 minutes, like listen to this podcast, obviously, but think through this and that, like almost as a checklist. Like I look at it kind of like the 80/20 of any email account, which is kind of how are we getting our emails is the first step. Then it's kind of what are we doing at that initial funnel moment when we do get the email. And then beyond that, it's what's happening afterwards. And I like to kind of segment it down that way. The first one is like how are we getting the emails? Obviously like pop-ups or usually when someone places an order. One place I see like an insane amount of brands like are neglecting this, but like just the quality of the pop-up, there's so much opportunity to A/B test pop-ups and
Mm.
meaningfully increase opt-in rates, which I think a lot of brands will hear gurus and marketing experts talk about pop-ups, but not actually do it because it sounds like too good to be true. Like I'm here telling you, like we're working with 7, 8, 9-figure brands. Like the results we're seeing just through improving pop-ups over a 3 or 6 month stretch is like leading to tens, hundreds, even millions of more, tens, hundreds of thousands, and millions more like opt-ins for brands. And
Wow.
like when we start talking in those kind of numbers and telling a brand, hey, we just generated 200,000 more emails this year, no one's going to ask about the ROI because like there is a way to monetize those emails one way or another. And
Yeah.
like that's the next question is like, okay, we have the emails, like we've listened to your device, we did the pop-ups, now what do we do? And I think like when it comes to like the actual like what to do with the email, a lot of brands first default is like the flows, let's get everything automated. And I think a lot of brands are doing like an okay job there. There's definitely low hanging fruit. I think where brands are kind of not connecting the dots is usually on the actual campaign front. I think brands are overly sensitive and conservative with campaigns in the sense that they're just not sending enough. And
Mm.
a lot of agencies will tell you, hey, like send more campaigns just because it's tied to retainer. At least with our agency, our approach is very much like, let's A/B test it. Let me actually prove to you that 1, 2, 3 campaigns extra per month over a statistically significant period of 1 or 2 months where we can prove out the LTV, at least on a short-term standpoint. We can prove like, hey, this is actually going to drive meaningful revenue for your business. Let's add it. And usually after one of those tests, the brand comes back and says like, hey, let's like do that test again, or let's accelerate 2 or 3 times more. And that's like massive alpha for brands, because I've seen like a 30-40% increase in email frequency lead to anywhere from 10 to 20% more value per email subscriber, which trend, and this is like real Shopify revenue. This isn't like what Klaviyo attributes. I would say that's like the big missing piece. And then the third one, I think like, I don't know how like under utilized this is by brands, but like just like respecting the fundamentals of the inbox. Like you kind of mentioned, it kind of gets forgotten. I think the inbox is a very sacred space, and people are kind of forgetting about it, or because people are treating it like it doesn't really matter. But I think as more and more brands take it seriously, the importance of like deliverability, the importance of like really strong subject lines, the importance of like not doing sketchy stuff inside of your emails, like is going to matter more and more. AI and algorithms are getting smarter, and I'm seeing a lot of brands try to do sketchy stuff, use like weird like identity resolution, inbox placement, all these like weird little like SaaS apps to kind of hack email. And I'm finding like that's actually hurting brands more than they realize. They're ending up with like crappy lists and bad deliverability and all sorts of stuff. So I won't ramble too much longer, but those are kind of the big buckets I usually tell brands to look at and where they unlock like meaningful wins.
Interesting take on the identity resolution piece. That's a little contrarian there, Phil.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was actually just about to follow up with that, because I am so data heavy where those types of tools, if you're going to tell me you're going to get me more emails, you're going to get me more customer data, that data will then allow me to retarget better. I can throw that into multiple ad platforms.
It's exciting.
Consumer profile. I can dump that into my ESP, etc. But you're not a fan. I mean, what's going on here? Everybody loves consumer data. What's going on?
Come on, Phil.
Come on.
Before I get attacked in the comments about identity resolution, I'll put a massive like asterisk. This is a cross testing we've done on a few of our 8-figure brands where we've tested over a significant amount of time different types of identity resolution solutions. So like obviously like around the abandoned checkout, around like abandoned browse, and like capturing emails we wouldn't have otherwise captured. So a lot of the testing we've done is not statistically, like from a significant standpoint, proven to us that there's enough revenue to justify the deliverability hurt of people getting pissed off because you emailed them without permission. And it's very much in that last bucket where I mentioned of like not doing sketchy stuff that'll hurt your reputation as a brand. And when I say reputation, I don't mean like in like the fluffy brand term, which is totally like a whole other conversation, but reputation as far as how inboxes view you. So that's what I'm always trying to balance is like 100% there's some upside to be had with identity resolution. And I think some brands can benefit like way more than others, where for some brands actually detrimental. And there's like some brand power components. So when I look at the big brands of the world, like the Abercrombies, the Aritzias, who have these like massive lists, massive brand power, huge e-com volumes, they can get away with stuff like identity resolution because frankly, like some people just don't even realize whether or not they signed up when they were in store, so they can get away with it. But I think some more like unknown brands, like if you just like start emailing them, like people will remember, they will send you to like spam, and like it's very hard to come back from that at scale. And so that's always the thing, like we're trying to A/B test with brands and prove out like, hey, how incremental is this? And like, is this extra like 2 or 3% revenue on email? Is it worth it for you to risk like potentially ending up in the promo tab like 5 or 10% more? And like those are the discussions we're having. I think it's a much more like nuanced deliverability conversation brands should be having with experts that is not happening right now. So it's less so like don't do identity resolution, but it's just like be very wary of like doing things like that aren't fully kind of white hat.
Got it. I took from that all 9-figure brands need to run identity resolution. That's what I took from that. I just want to say that's what I took from that.
Yeah, I think these are wise words. I think these are wise words. I will say, Phil, you know, I'm just kind of driven by novelty. You know, when something new like comes up that's exciting and it fuels me. You know, and I think human nature kind of works that way. But I think this kind of advice especially when it comes to email, is, man, it's tried and true, and it's you know, it's relevant. It's like continually relevant. That being said, Phil, is there anything on the horizon in 2026 in the category, people doing new things, trying new things, things that you've been doing on your pop-ups, etc., and that fires you up, that you can just sprinkle for us, a little sauce? Anything top of mind for you there, Phil?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few interesting things we've been working on. One is obviously RCS. RCS is the future of like text messaging technology, and if you're running a 7, 8, even 9, 10-figure brand, you're not on RCS yet, I would talk to your retention people right away. Just the power of your brand showing up in someone's phone versus them having to save a contact. I think that's insanely valuable and something you shouldn't kind of skip out on. Beyond that, I mentioned like obviously around pop-ups, but I think where a lot of brands are not spending time is actually taking a step deeper. I think most brands haven't even optimized the opt-in yet. Like they're still operating
Mm,
pop-ups like it's 2010. But where we should be is like we need to skip to 6 months from now where you've tested your pop-up, it's awesome, and now you're doing very deep like offer testing with your pop-up and figuring out like
Yeah.
for new customers and existing customers, beyond what like Klaviyo or a lot of apps let you, like using things like IntelliGems to really deeply analyze like what's actually like margin expanding for us and what drives more margin. I think that's where like honestly like 95% of brands are not even thinking about. And you're showing the pop-up one way or another. You're disrupting that consumer journey. So you better be like damn sure that it's driving more revenue for your business. Otherwise, you're doing it the wrong way. Beyond that, a lot of deliverability stuff on our end. Like we're building out like N8N flows. We're building out custom automations all around like list cleaning, catching spam. Everyone's talking about it like dead internet theory, bunch of spam everywhere. Bots are also popping up all over the place. They're like attacking
Yeah.
all of our big clients. And if you're not setting up like proper traps, like you're going to get screwed on a deliverability. So those are probably like the really three big buckets. And then you mentioned at the start, like the highest overarching thing that we're working on is just having the most creative emails in e-commerce, the most creative
mm.
copy and like the coolest design. Like Gemini and like all these apps have pushed design and what a really good designer can do to the point that like you can make anything a reality with the right mind, and then layering on amazing copy on top of that and really cool concepts, with the goal of like making people excited to open their emails. And like that's what everyone should be striving for, at least in the email space.
Well, I think you mentioned a number of things that prove you are at the front edge, the cutting edge of the game, my friend. Phil, we appreciate you coming and dropping that sauce on us. Give us 10 seconds, man, for people that want to talk to you, work with you, consult with you. Where do they find you? Where do they go?
Yeah, for sure. Ball and Phil on Twitter. I made that username when I was like 12. Don't make fun of me. I write an emails. I write a newsletter about email. Literally, like I nerd out on this stuff to like thousands of people. It's called Paperboy. You can find it on Google, Paperboy email newsletter. Or if you guys are looking to work with our agency, Bedford Marketing on Google, you'll find us.
Nice.
We work with 7, 8, 9-figure brands on email marketing.
Amazing.
Awesome, Phil. We appreciate you, brother. Look forward to having you back.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me. Have a good day.